Hi, I'm Maynard Kraak. I'm a director and producer. Well, I came into the industry in '99, so it's 21 years. It's changed quite a bit, I think. The landscape has shifted tremendously. There's definitely been transformation on the move. From when I came in, there were very few people of color, in particular in positions like directing and producing. And that has shifted and changed dramatically, positively, in my opinion. However, that transformation process is not completed yet. Yeah, 26 years into democracy, we still have a problem in that transformation is not complete. We still see the industry skewed slightly to white male-dominated in certain positions. In particular, I'll come to directing and producing and that, and certainly in writing and cinematography. In terms of evolution, that evolution process still has to continue in that respect. In terms of quality of what we're producing in South Africa, I think that has improved tremendously over that time. I remember in 2000 doing a couple of short films and helping my very good mate Akira Matoso make his first feature film, God is African, and we were shooting on scraps, man, really on pieces of 35 mils that people, the short ends that they would donate to us, and then we merged that shoot with digital before anyone else was doing digital in South Africa. People are looking down at us like, what are you doing shooting on digital? What's happened to those guys, all those film snobs? I'm telling you, they got left behind. That's what happened. And you look at Akin right now; he's flying. He's doing the first Netflix series in Nigeria right now, and that is amazing. So the evolution, from the perspective of the amount of films that we are making, has swung completely to the opposite, where we were making 1 or 2 films a year when I came into the business here, to whatever the number is now, quite substantial. So I think what we need to see now in terms of the balance is, out of those films, we need to see movies elevate into the global space, which are made in South Africa, that we can get the recognition that is well deserved, in particular for the talent we see in front of camera in South Africa. We're blessed with this amazing generation of actors and the talent behind the camera. So it's just a matter of time of bringing the storytelling up to the appropriate level, because that is where we're falling short. It is in the writing that we need the most improvement. And once we can elevate beyond where we are right now, I think the future is extremely bright for filmmakers, for actors, for everyone. We have within the local films that's made, we need to elevate those films to a global audience, so that it is. You think about Australia, where Australia was in the 90s, 20 odd years ago, and how they, in the first instance, brought the industry up by getting their own domestic audiences to come and watch their films, and out of that rose a few, Muriel's Wedding and a couple other films which then went into the international space, and it was completely just Australian films. So in my opinion, we are 25 years behind a country like Australia in terms of the industry, and where they had managed to bring the audiences in big numbers, and then out of that you had films like A Muriel's Wedding, etc., popping up above the rest in the poppy field, and making it in the global space. In South Africa, we are still in that process of doing that. The difference between us and Australia, for example, would be that we have multiple languages, we have the audiences, the demographic shifts and changes, so that is very, very different in that respect. But what is definitely happening is that across that demographic, we are seeing commercially successful projects emerging. I use an example, Losing Lerato, for example. This film has, a small picture, and it's done really, really well domestically in its theatrical run, and it is also getting picked up at festivals, and I'm sure they're going to be making sales internationally very soon on that project. Now, those kind of films is what I'm talking about. When we talk about where we fit into the global community, those local films need to need to travel beyond our borders. The international co-production space. This is really the area that where the most development is happening right now in our industry, and it's so through agencies like the National Film and Video Foundation and so on. There's been an encouragement to work across borders with countries that we have treaties with. And just by the way, in terms of the treaties, we only have 10 treaties right now. And we need to increase that number, I believe, in terms of who we can possibly work with. We are part of this BRICS nations, yet we don't have a treaty with any of those countries, with the exception of Brazil, which is the most recent treaty. But you have Russia, India, China, and we don't have a treaty with any of those countries. Which for me that is alarming. How can you have cooperation on other political levels, but on a cultural level, not? So I think that's something which needs to be addressed within that international community. And then there are other countries that, for example, I'm working with Belgium on a number of different projects, but all of those projects have to be in a multilateral situation, working with Canada and Belgium, working with Germany and Belgium, working with the UK and Belgium, and that is because we don't have a treaty with them, and so we have to use a different methodology in terms of creating a co-production in a tripartite alliance. So where do we sit in this global community? I think we're at a distinct advantage, especially compared to, let's say, in Eastern Europe or so on, or even Australasia, for European or North American countries to want to co-produce with, because of our, we've got this amazing locations, we've got this amazing crews, and we've got, let's hope we have a decent rebate when we come out of this COVID-19 situation, and we have a favorable exchange rate. So with those factors, it is very encouraging, when we're looking at working in partnership with international companies. I'm currently working with Canada on a project which we in hiatus right now, and as soon as the borders are open, we can go ahead and shoot this feature, Shaidan, which is a creature feature horror film, and we're shooting in Port St. John's in the Eastern Cape. But then we have multiple other projects. I've got there's a film that I have with a producer out of Los Angeles called Charlie, and we've got, which is going to be shot up in Limpopo. We have one of those three-way co-pros with Belgium and Germany for a movie called Beyond Day Zero, which is about the setting slightly in the future in South Africa post another drought. For myself specifically, I can say it's very encouraging, the landscape in terms of where we sit in the global community and people wanting to work with us in South Africa. First of all, this is a very tricky one, because on the one hand, one wants to be encouraging of everyone who wants to make a feature film to go in and do so. However, I would just err on the side of caution, not to just jump into it, into a feature straight off. It would be better, in my opinion, if there was some groundwork behind it in terms of short films, or series, television or digital series, for example. So that would be my first point, that I would err against just jumping straight into a feature film. It is difficult and complicated, and you would benefit by having some experience at least behind you. Having said that, if you've got the money and you can do it, well, go ahead and do it. But if you're just saying from a kernel of an idea, how is that going to get from just being a brain fart to something on the screen and someone is paying to watch it? In the first instance, I would make sure that that the development of the script and the screenplay is given the most attention in the first instance. Because it's one thing having a great idea, but having great screenplay is completely something else. And you need that fully developed screenplay in order to reach the financing. in order to reach the talent for everything. It starts with that. So I would say, make sure you surround yourself with the right people in terms of, if you're a producer, getting a great writer to write that idea, or if you're optioning that great idea and initial script or treatment or whatever it is, make sure that is a viable project. You have different reasons for making films. One, it's something which is commercial and can recoup its money back for its investors. The other one is making something which is gonna give you the recognition by participating in festivals and so on. So you need to have understanding of what the film is in the first instance before you even jump into this thing. Make sure you know what it is that you want to achieve with the film and what the film itself can possibly do. So you don't want to get caught with the foot in two worlds, not understanding how that project is going to get realized. That is your first step, is getting the screenplay into a place and understanding your target and what you want, and really nailing onto that target and going for that specific thing. If you're going for the festival route, there's every chance that film can cross over out of that into a more commercial space. If you're going the commercial route, well, there is a slim chance that a film can also be something which is going to be something for some festivals. However, really focus on, especially if it's you early in your career and it's your first or first film and so on, really understand what it is you want to achieve with that film. Then you can decide how you're going to finance that film, because you could go the no or very, very super low budget route and get favors and people to help you make that film a reality. Or you have to go the other way, and it has to then have some commercial value to it by having an investment into that film of considerable amount of money in order to make that film. But then we have to ensure that film be able to recoup its money so that you can return the money to those investors. So those are the two avenues that you can pursue then. So in South Africa, your options here is, what are you going to do? Are you going to spend money on development of the film? Do you have access to that, to developing the screenplay? There are very few areas where we can get development funding in South Africa. So the National Film and Video Foundation would be your first option there, which is an agency of the Department of Arts and Culture. You have the KZN Film Commission has a development fund. There's little else in South Africa where you're going to get that development funding, other than if you went the route of going to an Mnet, whether that be an Afrikaans film via CapeNet, or if it's a film which fits into the Mnet bubble, or if it's something for the Mzansi bouquet. So you have these options, and they do have development funding available. So that is an option to exercise, definitely. With all of these options, there comes various pressures, etc., to deliver according to a development schedule and so on. And this is, we not even touching on the production side. This is just to kind of develop. Or if you hitting a brick wall and say, "Oh, I'm not getting funding here and I'm not getting funding there," what are you going to do? Are you going to quit? Well, this is where we separating the chaff from the wheat. It's right here where. Do you have the passion and the drive and the cojones to take that project over that wall and make it happen, even if you don't have the development funding? Because that is where the real filmmaking is going to, and especially from the producer's point of view, and together with at this point in time with the writer, in getting those projects over the line. Now, this is the area where we're working on spec, and you're taking that risk, you as the producer or the writer, that you will get paid once, whether that's 2 cents or 2 million rand, whatever it is, that you're going to get paid once that project actually reaches fruition, it can get made, right? So, but you still need to get that from being just an idea in your head or on a piece of paper to a working screenplay which can be financed. When it comes to the financing of films, once again you have the NFEF and so on. But remember, you can't put all your eggs in this one basket because they only finance 9 features a year. They got 3 calls a year, and they fund 3 feature films in each of those 3 calls. The amount of filmmakers in South Africa is growing rapidly all the time. So the money in the pool is not sufficient. So you're going to have to find other ways, whether it be crowdfunding or whichever other way to do that. You're going to have to do that to get that finance to make that project happen. However, there are other opportunities for finance as well. I already mentioned the KZN Film Commission. You have the Eastern Cape. You have equity from the IDC, or the National Empowerment Fund. These are all avenues that you have to explore. But over and above all of this, you're still going to have to try and bring in some private finance. This is where, in South Africa, we need to do the most work in terms of the financing of films, in getting the private sector to invest in films and for them to see the value. And for them to see the value, they need to see the return on the investment. So this ties in back to that, what films are being made. So you're going to have to, if you're going this route, you need to be able to make a film that is going to make that money back for that investor. As soon as that private investor sees, oh, I can make 20% on my money within a year, or 25% on that is encouraging enough that it can motivate them to be involved in financing of films, as opposed to leaving that money sitting in the bank. These are private individuals or private companies, so they're profit driven, so they need to see that they're going to make money. So across the board, there are different ways of getting finance, and if you're one of those lucky, I won't call you what you are, who has access to lots and lots of money because of mommy and daddy, go to the bank of mommy and daddy and go and make the movie. That's what I say. Directing is not only about creating pretty pictures. That is a large part of it. The actor is absolutely central to a film, to a story, and in the storytelling process. And I would not treat them as a tool. Quite often you find some directors coming in from a certain sector of the industry into narrative features, and they don't have necessarily they don't have the tools with which to work with the actor, and then treat the actor just as a tool in order to make their story work on screen, and that I feel is the wrong approach. So that means then the director needs to have at least some understanding, and I don't mean that the director must have been an actor, that is not what I mean, but needs to have an understanding of the actor's process, have to understanding of that actor's method that you're working with, because they have different methods of working. And most importantly, that director needs to understand his or her own process of working with the actor, and each individual actor, because they're all different. And so I come from a school of starting with the respect, giving the actor the respect that they know what they're doing. We've all, come from via different paths to where we are in the world, whether that be through film school, through drama school, through the College of Hard Knocks, whichever way you got to this point. Give the people the respect that they know what they're doing. So this is my philosophy and my process. Is then, in addition to the respect, is giving the trust that the actor understands the content, understands the tools at his or her disposal, which means is control of their voice and body and emotions and all of that, and be able to marry that to the storytelling and what is required in every moment, because a film is living from moment to moment and understanding the bigger picture of where they fit into the storytelling process. And this is where you need to work as far as possible with selfless people. Where in particular, look, the natural thing is for people is to be selfish. But in acting, in the true sense of the word, is not acting, it is reacting. And in order to react, you need to be able to be open and responsive to stimuli around you, i.e. the other person or your environment, and be able to react to that. So for me, it's about giving that trust then that the actor understands the material and is going to come, and my expectation is that the actor must have done their work. I'm not going to do all the work for them. They have to come and bring and offer their interpretation of their character in any given scene, in any given moment. So taking that philosophy and marrying that with an old adage of know your dialogue and don't bump into the furniture, I can then, as a director, work with and sculpt the performance by getting the actor to give and bring something to the table that we can work with, and then shape it from there. Because I do not want to be the one to dictate and say, well, you have to do, and this is painting by numbers. You get from here to there to there to there, and A, B, C, D, E, F, G. No, for me, it's a matter of getting the actor to understand what we require from that scene and where it fits into the big picture. And by doing those things, you need to have some understanding of acting. Now, I myself come through a different route to many filmmakers, and not unique, but to many filmmakers, especially in South Africa, which came through a television route. And that's good because I made a very conscious decision based on my mentor when I was at film school in the United Kingdom, who encouraged me to return home to South Africa, and because being a developing industry and there being more opportunities, and he was absolutely right. Then that I got opportunities very quickly off the bat, and I graduated in '99, and in the same year I started directing on Generations. So I was very lucky. I worked very hard, but there was a lot of luck involved there in getting that opportunity. And what I did with that opportunity is what my mentor had encouraged me to do, is to spend at least 5 years in daily drama. And people say, why would you waste 5 years in soap and such? And believe me, I had the same questions in the back of my mind. But in hindsight, what I understood, what John Sickle, my mentor, wanted me to do, was to have the opportunity to exercise my skill set on a daily basis with working professional actors, and then being able to develop a process for myself in terms of working with the actor and creating a shorthand for myself of a dramatic and actor's vocabulary in terms of being able to elicit a performance out of an actor in any given role, and this all done under pressure within the sausage factory that is daily drama. So all that constant working with the actor exercises that muscle in terms of working with the actor. So I did also, spend a little bit of time in front of the camera, not through my own design, but producers threw me in there while I was directing on Generations. But that, I would say, is not the reason. There's no need for a director to have been an actor. It has its advantages, I believe, for sure. But it's not a necessity. But one really needs to understand acting and have a respect for the craft of acting. I made a few shorts in the early 2000s, 2000, 2001, 2003, I made a few shorts. I made another short in 2009, London, which played at Cannes in 2010. And those were very different projects. No similarities between the short films that I did previously. And then when I went on to make my first feature film in 2013, Vroosik Boer, which is a very white Afrikaans film. I made a very conscious decision developing that story. I created that story having worked for a few years in the Afrikaans world, where I was head of development for Stock Films, and I directed a little bit on Binnenlanders, and I produced and did some directing on Paris, etc. So I really had an understanding of this Afrikaans world. So at the time, in South Africa, the most successful, let's put Schuster in its own category, everything else besides Schuster. At the time, the films that were doing well commercially in the cinemas were Afrikaans films, predominantly white films. So wanting to make something which is going to be commercially successful, to start building a track record with financiers, etc., I made that decision to make a film that spoke to that audience. Yet at the same time, I was, and I don't think many people necessarily understood what I was doing, because I've been questioned so many. Why would you, as a colored person from Cape Town, make a very white Afrikaans film? And it was also a commentary on white Afrikaans culture, in a sense. So in that particular film, my analysis of the fairy tale of a romantic comedy in an Afrikaans world is it's a Cinderella story, or it's one of those fairy tales where the girl comes from a different world from the prince. And in this case, the prince being the farmer, and the kingdom being the countryside, the platteland. So for me, it was a commentary on that. And then a little subtle one which I floated into that is that I made it lily white. So is that really a South Africa that exists, where everyone is white and there are no people of color? No, it's a fantasy. And so that was my own little vignette which I put onto that film, and flew under the radar in terms of the commentary. However, there have been one or two academics who picked up on that, and in fact it's been included in a study of, along with a few other white Afrikaans films, about films made about Afrikaans, the platteland and all this kind of things within their culture. So that was in terms of how they came to make that particular film. Fast forward to a film which I made in Cape Town in 2015, which is a very broad, raunchy comedy, Finders Keepers. With that particular project, I developed that with a very good friend of mine, Srini Pillay, and we both, we're almost the same age. He's a month younger than I am, and we are both turning 50 this year. So we were teenagers in the 1980s. And in the 1980s, there were these raunchy comedies like Porky's and Revenge of the Nerds and all these, these very broad comedies. And I wanted to make one of those a homage to those movies, make a movie like that. And that's how I decided on making that particular picture. If we go to something like Sonskimber Park, which is a dramedy, and it's about someone returning from abroad back to South Africa and investing in South Africa, in a sense, and yes, I've been overseas and it's great and fantastic, and but I'm South African, and I want to encourage other people in South Africa to stay or to bring their skills back and to stop the brain drain. So that film's message was actually that, although it was wrapped up in this romantic dramedy and set in the world of craft beer microbrewing. And by the way, I really like craft beer, so that was another reason for that particular film. Then, if you look at something like The Last Victims, this film spoke to me in a sense of, we're holding a mirror up to South Africa, where we are today. Have we really dealt with our history? Have we really dealt with our past? Now, we had the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, TRC, which played an active role in this healing process, or so we think, or thought at the time, and where it was successful for those people who did actually get the closure that they needed by perpetrators of violence towards them having come to the fore to atone or seek forgiveness for what they had done. The majority of people who have been affected by the apartheid government have not actually really benefited, because not everybody has come forward. So this was for me an important element in deciding to actually make this film with Rajiv, was this message that here is a film that we have an opportunity to open up old wounds in order for us to cleanse it properly through introspection of where we've come from and where we are today in South Africa. It's a very subjective film. Some people love this film, and I've had other people that have been screaming at me at festivals, at Q&As, because of this being a film of reconciliation rather than a film of retribution. That was in my reasoning for doing that film. I'm busy with another picture at the moment, which we were hoping to do this end of this year, but of course it's also going to get pushed into 2021. And it's a film about racial identity, and it's about a young man who gets reclassified white, which was possible during apartheid. Which is just absurd, that because on a piece of paper you are told you are X, you are black, you are colored, you are white, you are whatever. A piece of paper says that. The absurdity that you could then go and have that changed to a different race of your choice is just, I'm sorry, it's just ridiculous and absurd. But it's very real. It happened, and it's something which very few people know about or have any experience of. And this is one of the things I wanted to do is tell a story which has a look at the apartheid past, but through a lens of something that you've not seen before. I mean, you've seen so many apartheid movies and Madiba movies and so on, but I wanted to look at the real nuts and bolts of it. Just normal, regular people affected by apartheid and how that comes about. So when I'm choosing material nowadays, if it's for myself to direct, I am looking for films which speak to me, that my voice can be heard through this medium. And I think this is one of the critical things as a filmmaker, as a director, is that if first of all, you must have found your voice, and your material will do the speaking. It will actually add the physical element to that. As a producer, it's slightly different, because I've positioned myself into this international co-production space. So I'm looking at material through either the lens of this is going to be a commercial project, and that we can that's going to have value in that respect, or a co-production that we think will have value in terms of red carpet materials, opportunities for the talent or the director and other filmmakers, a cinematographer, editor, composer, etc., to have that opportunity to get into a major festival and so on. So those are the two ways I'm kind of looking at acquiring material nowadays. And of course I also have my own projects like White Lie that I was just spoken about, that I conceptualize myself and want to get made.